Well, welcome everybody. It's a lovely Monday here and placed in shelter. Your host, Ryan Catarozoli. I hope everybody had a wonderful Mother's Day weekend. I know ours was good. However, the weather here was a little bit suspect. In fact, yes, there was snow flurries in the air. Now, it didn't accumulate on the ground, but we can't seem to figure out the weather here. I mean, one day it's 75 and sunny, kids are outside running around, and then the next day it's actually got snow flurries in the air. While it's sunshine and beautiful skies, so it's a bit crazy over here, but we're making it through. I wanted to know how many people hadn't ever heard the Simpsons predicts the future reference, and more importantly, how many people went down the rabbit hole this weekend, because I still think that's one of the best. And today's episode I am going to title The Colder Side. So obviously in a lot of these talks we've really focused on the core elements that have made Hatco who Hatco is over the last 70 years. But we are on the cold side, so we do have several products that work. So today I want to talk about the colder side of Hatco, and no, we're not talking about Dan Frigo. It's we're going to talk about refrigerated wells. And obviously most of the talk that we've had has been like, how do we fix all of the hot bars and the wing bars? And every time we have one of these conversations, we always talk about how we can kind of fix the current situation or how we can modify pieces of equipment. And yes, there are open salad bars like you see here in the picture, and those may go away in the foreseeable future, and I definitely know they're away right now. But let's not forget, these hot wells and these cold wells are utilized in the back of the house a lot. I mean, everything from, I think of pizza places like a Papa Murphy's, or where they're actually making the products behind you, any of the sub sandwich chains, a lot of the basically any kind of fast food restaurant that's doing some sort of preparation in front of you is utilizing some sort of hot or cold well. So there's still a ton of application for these things. So with that being said, let's start talking about some of the advantages that Hatco can offer on the cold side. So let's start out, and I want to talk about a couple of things. So number one, Hatco was not the first manufacturer to make a cold well. That's true, we know that. But there is some advantages to being, call it late to the game, or coming in after certain manufacturers that have already made them. And the reason there's an advantage is because we're able to see some of what I like to call the pitfalls that there are across the other manufacturers. So there's certain service issues, there's certain applications, there's certain manufacturer things that are very, very different from the way that we're doing our manufacturing. And then because of that, we're able to work in some of our advantages without having to, go through a lot of the growing pains that some of the other manufacturers have gone through. Having said that, let's talk about some of these advantages, right? So number one, serviceability, okay? When we talk about the serviceability on this unit, I want to talk about the installation first. So how many people here, and I would be willing to bet at least one person in here, if not a majority of you, have experienced a project or a job where you got on site and they were ready to put the cold well in, and it turned out that the fabrication or the millwork did not line up properly with the condensing unit. And what I mean by that is all condensing units, especially ones that are going to be enclosed in fabrication or millwork, which is about all of them. Nobody has any of these condensing units shown to the public. Those have to be in the right direction so that moving air is going across them and they're able to breathe. Now, with the other manufacturer, if you purchase one of the lesser expensive options, they're going to have the condensing unit in a fixed position, and you are not going to be able to make any adjustments to that at all. Now, taking some slides from Brad's wonderful Hatco U presentation, the condensing unit can be rotated 90 or 180 degrees so that you can get the airflow in the proper direction. Now, with that, on units that are 4, 5, and 6 pan units, they will actually move in 6.5-inch increments from one end to the other. Well, the reason for that is because we use copper flex lines, and you're able to move that and adjust that on the fly. There's no calling the factory. There's no ordering a new one in the last minute and having to put a rush in. You can make those adjustments very simply in the field. No plumber required, no HVAC guy required. This can be done by pretty much anybody. It's a couple of screws and then they position in different areas and you're off and running. So once that's lined up with the millwork for fabrication, there's no other worries to go about. One of the other things we added was a much larger drain so that you can obviously clean it easier. I know everybody is at the end of the night on their rush to get out. They're really picking up every last piece of food that's in there. Well, we know that's not true. They're trying to rush out at the end of the night, so they're going to clean the well as quickly as possible. So we do add a larger drain for you. And then with that, we're using 513A refrigerant right now. We were using a 404 that was since no longer applicable, so we cannot use that any longer. So we've switched to the 513, which is good for the foreseeable future. And I know someone's going to ask the question about the R290. And yes, like any other manufacturer, we are working on that. I don't have a timeline as to when things will switch over, but currently the 513 is very, very sufficient for us. It's efficient and it's working. So we don't see any reason to make an immediate switch. We want to make sure we do all of the right testing so we're not putting something out in the market that could have potential issues. With that, we've also recessed the pans 3 inches down. So what we did is called an NSF7 approval that we've gotten, and it's a cold wall construction. So the way these cold lines are adhered to the outside of the box is through a process. You've got to put them upside down. They go into kind of a jig that holds in the lines in place. They're adhered to the side, and then they're foamed in place in a kind of a coffin system. And here's the benefit to that. We are not getting these lines in different places on every single build. They are exactly the same every single time. And if you've ever been to Hatco, you know that we've actually cut some of these apart so you can see the inside. And you can see which manufacturers do the same thing that we do or something similar. And you can also see some of the manufacturers that don't do it that way. And usually cost is the difference there. But it's one of the most eye-opening experiences I had when I first came to Hatco was being able to see the insides and see what they were truly made out of. Now, there's also an auto defrost included. It's not activated from the company. It has to be activated in the field. And then with that, you're also getting sight glass, service valves, dryer, and flexible lines, which we talked about. And then in this picture here, you can see that it's available in a slim line as well. You can also have it slanted. So again, the slanted option is just a little bit easier for people to see. With the angled bezel that we use on the front of it, the visibility of the product goes up greatly, especially as you're standing further and further away. You know, we joked before the sneeze guards were getting really big. Well, now they may be completely enclosed. So having that angle in the front is really going to give you visibility to the food product. And also, when it's sitting behind a counter and somebody's working from that, ergonomically, it looks nicer to have a little slant and then have those recesses in there. It's very easy to see what you're reaching for. You know, all of those things you have to take into account when you start looking at pricing, because one of the first things people will say is that there are less expensive options out there, which is totally true. There's always less expensive options. However, if you were to truly compare apples to apples and take one of those lesser models and start adding all of those features, start adding copper flex lines, start adding the ability to move the condensing unit, start adding sight lines and auto defrost, what you find is that the competition's price comes up and it's pretty much right in line with where our price is. We didn't want to do that. We didn't want to start out low and have you have to build these. We wanted to put all of these things in the product so that every time you order it, you're going to avoid all of those headaches and serviceability issues for the first time, as opposed to, you know, the second time you order, knowing what you need to add in the future. So with that, that's going to wrap up today's conversation, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So in the chat right now, it doesn't look like we have any crazy questions. I will give it a couple of seconds here. Today's memes are, number one, keep complaining about the quarantine. You just bought yourself another month. You want to keep going, pal? I can do this all 2020. Please don't. I'm not complaining. I got the memo. I'm good. Let's end this as quick as possible. Here's what the Last Supper would look like if it occurred today. Looks like the last Zoom supper. And then this is one of my favorites because, you know, I grew up in the era of Chuck Norris jokes. So this one I thought was great. Chuck Norris has been exposed to the coronavirus. The virus is now in quarantine for the next 2 weeks. If you are watching on YouTube, you can always join in live and ask any questions that you'd like by using the link in the description. Join us 3 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. If you are subscribed to the Hatco account and want to know every single time a video goes live on YouTube, simply hit the bell notification down in the corner and show us you're truly enjoying the content by liking, sharing, and subscribing. And with that, have a wonderful Monday evening, and we will see everybody tomorrow.